Hello again from lovely Town. Bruce here as always. Now, in order to give you an idea of how I got to where I am now, I want to quickly go through the last several years so you guys can understand kind of where I came to, how I got here. Now, at the end of 2018, I was hospitalized for 5 days with a respiratory infection. They stabilized me, released me, but never came up with a diagnosis. Just kind of a wasted 5 days, really. Within a week, symptomologies were coming back, the fevers, coughing, all that. So I went to my primary care doctor. He did his thing and immediately started me on a protocol of antibiotics. And it was his belief that, this was, a deep-seated infection. This was going to be hard to get rid of, and we would have to keep going at it for an extended period of time. So throughout 2019, we kept, doing different little regimens of antibiotics. I would do them, I would be off them for several months, go back, do a course, be off, and it was always like, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. When I was done, I would feel better, but then in a matter of a month or two, I would start to slide back, not feel so good, symptomology kind of come back, and we would go at it again. I was still functional. I was still working, all that. But I will say that I was never the same after the 2018 hospitalization. I never had the stamina that I had before, and I never was able to breathe as comfortably as I had before. It knocked me down substantially. And, people say, oh, it doesn't do long-term damage. Whatever it was, it did. And I have never been the same since. But as I say, in 2019, I was able to keep working, so forth and so on. The end of 2019, I saw a pulmonologist. They were like, oh, great, you've got emphysema. Oh, okay, COPD, whatever you want to call it. Okay, great, whatever. We'd like to, follow up, down the road with some other, CT scans, this kind of thing, But at that moment, going into 2020, from the imaging standpoint, there was no sign of anything cancerous. There was just the pneumonia. So, there we go. I'm still working, 2020, blah, 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 still doing antibiotics. Then, of course, the pandemic hits. And my industry, the corporate meeting and event industry, closes 100% right off the bat. Done. There is no work. Now, some companies and everything are able to pivot into the virtual, but I don't have a skill set that works to virtual. So I'm not really involved in that. I don't get any work out of that. So the only thing I can get is any video editing that comes along. And I'm able to get a little bit, but not that much, So we go along. My lovely GP decides to retire in I think it was April or May of 2020. So, there I am on my last antibiotic course with him. And, now I've got to go find another primary care guy, which isn't that easy, particularly in the middle of a pandemic. So, I'm out there trying, and the insurance that I have is, of course, the high deductible, right? I got to pay everything until I've spent whatever it was, $8,500, whatever it was, out of my pocket, right? Then insurance would start to pay for some of it. So even though I'm symptomatic, I'm coughing, I'm having night fevers, this sort of thing, I just, I'm not going to do anything about it because I don't have any income. I can't afford to go spending money, chasing my health care. I just can't, and we don't know in 2020 how long this is going to last, right? Is this going to be over in 3 months, 6 months? Nobody knew. We're all, trying to chase the game. I did the PPP. We got our personal stimulus checks. Then my wife and I went on unemployment, and thankfully, everything the federal government did at that time with the stimulus, the expanded unemployment, helped us tremendously because by the end of 2020, we had only lost a few $1,000s, where we could have lost a lot more. you know, because we had no income. But, going into 2021, I don't know what's getting ready to happen. I don't know what the future is. So I have to go and abandon all of our plans for our retirement and our future. And I have to start drawing my Social Security, which is a pittance, because we always made very little incomes so we could keep the business going. And we needed to both have salaries so we could have health insurance. So neither one of us could really make a lot of money. So, I didn't want to. That was never my plan. I was going to keep going until I was 68 and then retire because my wife would then be 65. She could get Medicare and the company would have enough reserves that we could go for another 2 years until I was 70. And then, I could start collecting Social Security, and so could my wife when she was 67, max it out. That was the plan, right? And everything had been going great to all of that. We still were going to be tight as far as having enough money to actually retire comfortably on, but we would have been better because the company was doing good. The company was profitable every year. So we were able to continue to build on our savings, and take care of expenses so we wouldn't have them when we retired. But all that, went out the window with the pandemic. So we were then living in an entire world, like most people, of absolute uncertainty. And that was, really, really wicked. And I know a lot of people, the pandemic and COVID hit a lot of people a lot harder than it hit us, but still, it was, a tsunami to us as far as our lives were concerned. Just threw everything right out the window that we had been planning and thinking and, banking on as far as the future was concerned. So, there we go, into 2021. I'm still symptomatic. I'm going through the coughing spells. They're getting worse, and the night fevers, all that sort of stuff. So, sorry about the phone ping. And we're just moving along, waiting for work to come back, and, when we get into 2021, there's more unemployment expansion. Great. I could have waited to take my Social Security, but, hindsight 2020, what are you going to do? So we keep going, but the business still hasn't turned around. It's not back, and it's not going to come back from everything we gather, probably until the beginning, somewhere in 2022. That's probably when it will happen, but it's not going to come back anytime sooner than that. So, we keep pressing on, but I turned 65, at the end of 2021. So, as soon as I turn 65, I get my Medicare, and off I go to see all the doctors, and bingo bongo, right off the bat, you got lung cancer. It's a pretty big tumor, Probably been growing ever since, the last imaging we did 2 years earlier, Just my luck, right? Because there I am stuck in one of the great, pitfalls of the American healthcare system where you don't get treatment because you can't afford it. You just can't spend the money for it, And I got caught and I got bagged. Had I looked and done imaging, earlier, a year and a half earlier, whatever, might have caught it quicker, might have been able to deal with it better, and maybe I would have a much better outcome. But, it is what it is. So, there we go. And of course, my wife is crushed by all this because she has, tried everything in the book to get me to stop smoking cigarettes since the day we got married. And I cheated on her and lied on her and said I would, but I never did. I just couldn't. I could quit maybe for a week, but I couldn't maintain it. I would always go back to it. It just had a hold on me, and I feel awful about it. At this point, had I skated through my life and never gotten cancer, and, died of a heart attack at 78, I wouldn't feel too bad, but I feel really bad because I know, had I done as she asked and stopped smoking way, way back, 35 years ago, maybe the outcome would be different. I don't know that for a fact, but maybe. But I really feel bad that, I just didn't do that for her. And now here we are living out her worst nightmare. And that's just, that will hurt me, and I will carry that regret to my grave, and into whatever afterlife there might be. So, going into 2022, we all know this, and my ability to work is pretty much gone now. I can do video editing sitting at my desk, but there's no way I'm getting on an airplane and going into a hotel and working on site. I simply physically can't. I have a cough attack, I do something. No, you can't do that in a live show. Can't do it. So I'm pretty much retired, whether I want to be or not. And we start at the beginning of 2022. We start the chemotherapy, and then the chemo dovetails into radiation. And when the chemo and the radiation are done, we begin the immunotherapy, which is a once a month infusion, and we press on from there. And I go through, all that stuff, and press on, and I am at least what I would consider functional. I can still go to the grocery store. I can, drive. I can go to the post office. I can still do some things, the end of 2022, in December, was the last time I go out, and I totally, I mow the backyard. I weed whack it, pull all the weeds, totally clean it up, But when 2023 starts, bam, the pneumonia really kicks in. And I end up in the hospital for, almost 3 weeks, getting IV antibiotics. And, they work to a point, they kind of stabilize me. But when I come out, we go back to doing immunotherapies, and it doesn't take long, maybe a month, and I'm right back in the hospital again. And more antibiotics. This time I let them put in a little PICC line or whatever you call it. Then I go home and I do the antibiotics at home, IV. Even though that cost me like $800, which I really didn't want to spend, But we did it, and, it helped, kind of whatever. But everybody in my teams at that point were pretty much starting to give up. My oncology guy was basically, well, I guess that's about that. We can do some more chemotherapy if you want. Otherwise, here's the palliative care lady. Talk to her. And pulmonology was pretty much, not much more we're going to do. Can't really get at that pneumonia. It's going to be there, whatever, And cardiology does a workup and says, I think maybe the immunotherapy, because it can screw with your heart, and some of the radiation, has taken a beating over 2 years. Your heart is substantially weaker than it was, Technically, it's failing, and we think probably because of that, you've got some level of water retention. So you're probably pooling up some liquid in your lungs, a little bit in your feet, And we need to deal with that if we can, with diuretics or try to get some heart meds going, this kind of thing. But there's really nothing to do for it. No pacemaker, none of that. So, and then, so here we are, and I go to another guy. He leads me to some possibilities for some trials, clinical trials. They don't pan out. There are none. Leads me down to another guy whose really only option is a interventional pulmonologist who wants to try to do a bronchoscopy and see if he can put some stents in my bronchi and open my lungs back up so I can breathe easier. We're going to do that on Thursday. So, this video will have been posted and long gone by the time that happens, so I'll let you know how that goes. So that's kind of where, as of today, how I got to be where I am. And, the other thing that happened that was like the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, was Hurricane Ian that came through in 2022. Basically dropped 4 trees on our houses. We own our main house and we own a house next door. and 4 big oak trees. They were laurel oaks, so they just tipped right up, boom, fell right over, landed on the houses. And it's been just a struggle. I mean, we still don't have the roof on the main house done, and that's just an ugly, ugly long story unto itself. With a company, we tried to find many, many companies. Each time we thought we had somebody, they would just decide, no, they really didn't want to help us. And when we finally did get somebody we thought was going to help us, we were really screwed. They were so incompetent, so dishonest, so much of a ripoff. We had to fire them and go back and start to do things ourselves and organize it ourselves. So we're still waiting to get the roof done here and to get the mold mitigation finally done and settled in this house so we can start to rebuild the parts of the inside that need to be ripped out and rebuilt from water damage and so forth. So, it just is a never-ending saga, And my wife, she's dealing with her aunt who has Alzheimer's, and she takes care of her. She's in a memory care facility now. She's looking after her parents who decided to downsize and are living in her aunt's condo now. So their house is being organized, cleaned, fixed up, to try to sell. But her brother is going to be living there for a couple of months because they have decided to move to lovely New Jersey. And so they've sold their house and bought a house in New Jersey, but they won't be leaving until like August or September or something like that. So they're going to be living in the parents' house until then. So, my wife's in dealing with me. She's got her hands full, and, she's just a saint. And I just, I am so fortunate to have her in my corner because I know she looks at me and goes, I told you so. And you just ignored me, and probably thinks I don't love her and I don't respect her. And, that's not true. I do very, very much. And I'm very, very sorry that it's turned out this way. It was not anything I ever wanted to happen, but, that's stuff I'm going to have to deal with her, So that's where we go. That's how the last 5 years have panned out. I'm still responsible for a disabled lady that's in an assisted living place. I've got to find a way before I die to get rid of her house. But, I physically can't do much in that respect, so I've just got to find a way to deal with it with my wife, and hopefully we can, find a way to deal with it and get rid of it and deal with our houses and getting them rebuilt and, just do everything I can before I die so I can leave as little behind for my wife as I possibly can. But, she'll never have enough money to live comfortably the rest of her life. I know that. And that hurts me deeply. I wish I could fix that. I don't know that I will be able to, but, I'll keep my eyes and ears open for ways to keep trying to make a little more money and hopefully find a way to do that. So that's the last 5 years that kind of bring me up. Sorry it's such a tale of woe, but I know there's a lot of people and a lot worse off than me. Trust me, I do know that. So I don't want to sound like I'm crying in my beer too much. Because, I'm thankful on one hand that it could have been a lot worse than it is, But on the other hand, I also know that, given what we are in, we've had a lot of crap hit us that we certainly didn't need at this point in our lives. But that's, I guess, just the way life goes, right? So, upward and onward. More coming. Thanks for listening. Peace and hang 10.